Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the new Amazon film Uncle Frank. And this is from writer-director Alan Ball, and tells the story of a young woman from South Carolina in the 1970s who has a very traditional kind of family, but she kind of is like the black sheep along with her Uncle Frank. And they have a special connection, and years later she winds up going to school in New York and finding out that her uncle is actually gay. And after her grandfather and his father passes away, they must take a road trip back to South Carolina to come and see the funeral. And will he wind up coming out to his family? Will he finally introduce his longtime partner, Wally, to the family? And this film deals a lot with that kind of journey. And it's really told from the perspective of this young woman played by Sophia Lillis, who is a very talented young actress. She showed her chops in It, and she's been in a lot of different things as well recently, and she does a fine job in this as well. She's a charismatic young lead in the film, and she has great chemistry with Paul Bettany, along with Peter Macdisi, who plays Wally, who is her Uncle Frank's partner. And this young woman is one of the first ones in her family to find out the truth about her uncle, and building this connection and going on this road trip. And she's going on her own journey, but I feel like the film's much more interesting looking at specifically Frank's situation. And all these years of trauma, something in his past happened which made him kind of put this way of life into the shadows from the rest of his family, and a very tense relationship that he had with his father. And coming home for this funeral, it's something that is very troubling for him and trial filled, and it's really interesting seeing those things coming back and hurting him and how he deals with things. The film is well shot, it's well paced. I feel like the story, though, this is only an hour and 35-minute film. I felt like it could have spent some more time breathing and allowing this revelation to play out with some of his family members. It builds up to some very tense moments and very dramatic moments throughout the film, and it's interesting in the way that it kind of throws a lot of stereotypical ways that different people might react to that kind of news into the fold. And the film can be a little bit rushed in terms of the story and how things played out. I think that the film could have benefited from expanding the story, maybe expanding some of the relationships, because you don't really see Frank interact a whole lot with his family, and it's kind of hard to build that connection of like, how should we feel about how they react if we really don't know their relationship up to this point. There's a little bit of time at the beginning of the film, and then there's some time towards the end of the film, but the vast majority of this film does center around Frank and his partner Wally, which Mark DC does a fantastic job as him. He has a lot of charisma, has a lot of personality, and their dynamic is, there's a lot of chemistry there. And there's some complexities, and it isn't just like a perfect kind of relationship. Each of them have their flaws, each of them have their secrets, and the film, I feel like, also gets a little too showy in terms of it feels a little too much like a film at moments, where you have these big moments and feels a little bit melodramatic at times and a little oversimplified, especially in the third act with some of the revelations. But I feel like this film is still moving. It's really well acted. Paul Bettany is great in this film. You have other cast members like Steve Zahn doesn't have a whole lot to do. He does a fine job. Judy Greer's in this. Like Margot Martindale and Stephen Root are the mother and father of the family. Lois Smith is one of the aunts in the family. They all give a really strong performance in what they're doing. It's just a lot of them don't get a whole lot to do and a whole lot to work with. Except where it's time, it's like, you know they're here because you have some emotional moments you're going to have to sell at some point in this film. But in general, I feel like Uncle Frank is an admirable film with some strong themes and important themes. It could be oversimplified, a little bit rushed at times, but I feel like it's still a meaningful experience and a moving experience. I felt things, and I think the great cast really helped as well. And from the top, all the way from Sophia Lillis' character all the way down, and it could have benefited maybe from a different perspective, maybe more focusing on Frank's, but Sophia Lillis' character here is our gateway into his story. And we see it through her eyes as a child and growing into a young woman. But those are my thoughts on Uncle Frank. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.